Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
No. Here's not Chris Schmidt, all right? This is Bill Doleman sitting in for Chris Schmidt. Somehow I got roped into sitting in for Schmitty, who's away with family today, and we wish him well and safe travels and all that. So here I am. And basically, you're with me for the next couple of hours, although we will hear from Chris because he's got a conversation with Danny Burke. He's got a conversation with Gary Barnett. The Spa Lady is going to be here, hopefully not talking about Kansas basketball as she did 15 years ago. But what this is going to basically be is perhaps a coup attempt, and we may go back in time, and this may turn into the Average Joe Sports Show Hail Varsity Edition, or Hail Varsity Radio, the Average Joe Sports Show edition. Also on the show today, we got Tom Shatel from the Omaha World Herald. So we're going to go back in time and visit with old friend of mine, and Mike Reilley, a Lincoln Northeast grad, who spent a lot of time with us back in the day on ESPN 1480 when we did do the Average Joe Sports Show back about 2003, 4, 5, and 6, somewhere in there. Now, as I say this, I want to bring in my co-host for the day, Damon Barr, is joining us. And Damon, were you even alive when the Average Joe Sports Show was on?
I was born in '98, so if that gives your answer or not, not something I was aware of. That's my answer.
It's part of Lincoln lore, so you might want to go back in time and listen back to all of the shows that we did, and you'll get up to speed on the Average Joe Sports Show. But that was a show that I did on ESPN 1480 back in the early part of this century, which sounds kind of odd to be saying. So anyway, welcome to the show. It's nice to be back in the saddle for the first time in about 15 years, and hopefully we'll get a chance to hear from some of you folks who listened back then, who listen now. 402-466-3776 and 1-800-825-5865 telephone numbers that have been ingrained in my head for about 20 years now. So what can we talk about on the show today? Well, the spring game, we still have some fallout that we can talk about from that, which also, by the way, was a return trip for me to go back to God's country and talk about my spring game experiences. What else is happening in the world of sports? Of course, the Aaron Rodgers story will not go away, and for some reason, it just continues to percolate quite a bit. Albert Pujols has been released by the Anaheim, Los Angeles, California Angels. Why aren't they the California Angels? I always thought, LA's got the Dodgers. And growing up in southeast Nebraska is much like growing up in Southern California, so I'm a lifelong Dodger fan. But I always wondered, well, why don't the Angels just take all of California? Why did they have to go from Anaheim to Los Angeles and all that? So anyway, Pujols has been let go and is looking for a new job apparently. What else can we talk about today? Hey, if you want to really get near and dear to my heart, let's talk some IndyCar and NASCAR. You into that at all, Damon?
I can't say I keep up with the scene. You're gonna have to fill me in on on what's going on right now.
Yeah, my guess. I just wanted to say that out loud just because I love talking IndyCar and NASCAR, but my guess is that we probably won't get a lot of calls on that. But we'll certainly love to hear from you. Again, 466-3776, 1-800-825-5865. All right, let's go back to this past weekend. All right, had an opportunity to go hang out in Lincoln and watch the spring game. And I tell you, it was great to be back in Memorial Stadium. It was great to be around a large group of people again. It was great to see people's faces, smiling faces, especially in Lincoln. And why not be smiling? Because you live in Nebraska, which, of course, is a suburb of heaven. But I thought it was a good show by Nebraska football, which is really what the spring game is kind of all about. I remember back when Bill Callahan took over, and people were all enamored with the new West Coast offense that was going to come in and revolutionize Nebraska football, for whatever that's worth. And like the first play, people were all excited because there's going to be all this motion, and there's all these players moving around, and like 5 guys shifting before the play. And I remember saying, look, that's all for show. And sure enough, after the spring game, Callahan said, yeah, it's all basically for show, which is what the spring game is. But I thought Nebraska put on a good show. But my question for you is, and perhaps for Tom Shatel when we talk to him in the next segment, is did we see the future of football in the spring game? And what I mean by that is the first half of the spring game was essentially touch football and pads. And with all of the concern about head injuries and the contact, the high speed of football, pad size, all of that stuff, is it possible that down the road we may see football be more like we saw in the first half than we saw in the second half? Now, I will admit, I did not watch any other spring game this spring, all right? I didn't watch Oregon's spring game on the Pac-12 network. I didn't watch Colorado's. I didn't watch anybody else in the Big Ten. So I don't know what anybody else did. But Nebraska, for the first half, played essentially touch football and pads. With all the concerns for injuries and all of that, did we see the future of football?
Well, Bill, I don't know if it's the future of on-the-field football, but there's a AP article, Ralph Russo, saying NCAA committees are pushing a new fall camp model forward. It's a 9-8-8 model, 8 days of helmets and pads with no live tackling, 9 days in just helmets, and you can't have more than 8 full contact days, no more than 2 consecutive days of full contact practices. So this is a measure that may pass and go into effect this next year, just affecting fall camp, but maybe that eventually does bleed onto the field. Who knows?
Okay, but what is the science behind that? The 8-9-8 or the 9-8-9 or the every other day in pads or whatever. Look, I'm going to go back in time, all right? I mentioned the Average Joe Sports Show. I said this probably as early as 2004, 2005. And I'm not sure. I did not go back in time to the sad instances when Dave Durson and Junior Seau passed away, and that really started to bring to the forefront the CTE issues and the concussions issues in the game of football. But I was saying 15 years ago or more that if you want to make football safer, and I've said it on Hail Varsity, if you want to make it safer, you get rid of the face mask, you get rid of the helmet. Because with players wearing those things, they all of a sudden feel somewhat invincible, that they can go in there and they can launch, and you can have the head-to-head contact. I've done a lot of rugby over the last 5 years, and there's probably, I don't want to say not a more violent sport, but you hear the body crashes, and you hear the bones crunching, and you hear it, and you see it, and you see guys who are massively sized, and you see guys who are not all that big, yet they go in there fearlessly, and rarely do you see the kind of injuries in rugby without pads, other than the skull cap that they have. You don't see the injuries in rugby that you see in football, and they've taken away the high tackle in rugby, right? So you can't go higher. That's a penalty. You go to the sin bin. But in football, you have the helmet and you have the face mask. And I know in Steve Sipple's column, I believe it was yesterday or the day before, he quoted Bill Moose as saying, if you want to make the game safer, get rid of the face mask. And Steve noted that, well, I think he was joking, or at least I think he was. Well, I've been saying this for a long time, and I went back and I looked in 2011. There's articles in the Washington Post. There's articles in Bleacher Report in its early days. Heinz Ward has said this. Most notably, John Madden talked about not having kids wear helmets and play tackle football at the ages of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. He was on a Heads Up committee about a decade ago and talked about making football safer. So my question is, and if people want to weigh in, 466-3776, 1-800-825-9865, is it as crazy now as what I said 15 plus years ago? Would the game of football be safer without helmets, which are aesthetically pleasing. I get it. And face masks are cool, especially when they're all kind of funky and all that. But if you got out there with a Joe Theismann or a Gary Premium single bar face mask, my guess is guys would be a lot more hesitant to go in face first. And I remember when Warren Sapp, back when he wasn't in trouble and was playing the game, he was saying, you know what? It's hard for us to be marketable when we're covering up our faces, right? And he's playing for the Raiders, pretty famous guy. Got his ass run over in the 1995 Orange Bowl by Nebraska and Corey Schlesinger and all those guys. But nevertheless, so my question is, did we see the future of football in the first half of the spring game? I was wondering, too, are we going to see special teams play where you've got a guy snapping the ball and a guy kicking the ball and one guy receiving the ball, and wherever they catch it, either the ball is dead there or you make your center go down there and make a one-on-one tackle. Not the Oklahoma drill, because that's about to become illegal, all right? But I thought, you know what? If we just punt the ball, the guy catches it, the ball is dead where he catches it, and that's where the next that's where the drive is going to start, right? So you don't have to worry about the Illinois punter roaming around aimlessly in Lincoln like we saw last fall, all right? He's got to kick it, the guy's going to catch it, and that's where that eliminates the dangers of the special teams play.
Hey, Bill, we got Chris on the line here.
Schmidt.
Not that Chris.
Oh, okay. Chris, how are you?
Billy D. Hey, so I'm gonna. This is maybe gonna be an unpopular sentiment towards this, but why is the push to make the game safer? Like, it's a violent sport. If you don't want to get hurt, don't play it. Like, that's been my stance on this all along. You know, going in that this is a rough contact sport, and the chances or the likelihood of you being injured are pretty good. So, I mean that's I guess from the the standpoint of if they start changing football more and more, I think they're already losing audience. People that don't want to watch it because they're changing the way the game plays. If you go to the way the game was played in the first half, the money is going to start to disappear, and ultimately, I think we can agree that money is what drives the sport to begin with. So that's just my thought.
Chris, I appreciate the call, and I agree with you. You know what you signed up for when you walk on the field, when you put the pads on. I think it is certainly scary when you start to hear about what is happening to those who have played the game and played the game prior to all of the attention that is being given to it. With Junior Seau, Dave Duerson, like I said, and all those who have followed, who may not have perished, but are suffering tragically because of injuries that were suffered before people really started to realize, how dangerous it is. But look, if you're going to launch the head and you're going to tackle the way some guys have tackled, and you're going to go back in time to the days of the Raiders and Jack Tatum, and one of the most famous plays in football was Chuck Bednarik laying out Frank Gifford back in the 1950s or 60s, right? And Chuck Bednarik even said, if you want to make the game safer, get rid of the face mask. That's one of the toughest guys to ever play the game. Mike Ditka said the same thing many, many years ago. I get it. You know what you signed up for when you signed up, but at the same time, you still can make the game somewhat safer. But sometimes you think the actions that they're taking aren't exactly going to make the product better. I think tackling is atrocious right now. And you don't see very good – you see a lot of sloppy play in the month of September, even in the NFL. But, yeah, you know what you signed up for when you signed up to play, but you can still, play it safer, play it smarter, and still make it more exciting. But I agree, the product has somewhat been diminished. Chris, thanks for the call. Appreciate it. Damon, where are we at on time? We got a couple more minutes?
Yeah, we got like 2 minutes here.
All right. So if you want to give us a call, 466-3776, 1-800-825-5865. But it is interesting when you go and you read a little bit more about it, see those who have voiced an opinion that, look, if you want to make it safer, there are some things you can do. I've always wondered, too, they've gone to these pads. Like the quarterback pad now look like they're, glorified J pads from back in the day. You look at what Scott Frost was wearing when he's running through Tennessee back in 1998. He's got linebacker pads on. But all of a sudden, they just have come to these things where they're just kind of protecting the shoulders a little bit. I would think that makes it a little more dangerous. Here's another thing, too. You mentioned this, Damon, that they're going to go do away with pads, but you can wear your helmet. So you're going to go helmets and no shoulder pads. It still seems to me that you're bringing the weapon to the fight here, to have the repeated, banging of the helmet. That mystifies me. If you want to keep the head out of it, guys will keep their heads out of it if they're not wearing the helmet. And again, this comes about because of what we saw in the first half of the spring game. And look, I didn't think it was that bad, to be honest with you. Was it fun? Was it exciting? Well, look, guys running through the line, he gets touched, referee calls the play dead, we move on. And not that big of a deal. But anyway, so did we see the future of football in the first half? Perhaps we'll chat with Tom Shatel about that. I know he had a thought or two in his post-spring column, and we're going to be talking to Tom from the Omaha World Herald coming up. Also coming up later on the show, Schmidt does have a conversation with Gary Barnett. Chris asked me to host the show, but no, still got to stick around. Still got to be a part of it. So we'll hear from Gary Barnett, and Mike Reilley will join us for an Average Joe Sports Show reunion.
And we're back.
Fellas, think we could listen to the radio lesson?
On Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Yes! That's awesome!
Welcome back to Hail Varsity Radio. I'm Bill Doleman, sitting in for Chris Schmidt, who is away with family today. He will be back in the saddle again tomorrow, and I'll be on the sidekick for a couple of minutes, as I usually am on a Friday. Somehow I got roped into this. So it's me and Damon Barr, and now joined by good friend, good columnist, Tom Shatel of the Omaha World Herald is joining us. Tom, how are you?
The legend, Doleman, you're back.
Well, sort of. I'm in the Highlands Ranch, Colorado bureau of Hail Varsity Radio, so not exactly in Lincoln. They wouldn't let me back in 2 weeks in a row, so I've got to do my time away. But yeah, it's great to be with you, at least on the radio.
Is that like the big red shop in Vail?
Kind of. It's also, by the way, my basement also doubles as NBC Sports Highlands Ranch. This is where we also do some of our international broadcasts is from my basement. So little secret out there.
Well, I won't tell anybody.
All right. Yeah, just between us kids. Well, it's great to have you with us. I texted Tom earlier today, and I said, I really don't know what's been going on around Nebraska, so maybe we could talk about my stuff, and you could chime in on biathlon, curling, archery, cross-country skiing.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll be happy to listen.
Okay. I'll share this with you, though, Tom. I was doing League 12 baseball last year. 2 years ago, because there was none last year. I'm doing the tournament in Oklahoma. I'm watching TV, and this gal looks up at the screen, and she's watching some obscure sport. So I do some of that stuff. She goes, the sport I really like is that sport where they ski around and shoot stuff. I said, you mean biathlon? She goes, yeah, where they ski around and they start shooting things. I go, well, it's not exactly like that, but nevertheless, that's an Oklahoman's view of what biathlon is, and I'm guessing maybe folks in Nebraska too.
I think it's like a James Bond movie I saw.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's what I tell people. All right, let's talk about the spring game. And Damon and I were talking about this in the first segment. And you made a little note in your column this week where you said you didn't mind the first half of the basically touch football in pads. I'm asking you this. Is it possible that we saw the future of football in the first half?
Yeah, I don't think it is. I mean, we've been hearing that for a long time. The reason I said that was because they had a very physical spring practice, and the issues I have with Nebraska football are not physical. It was when Frost took over. They got pushed around pretty good by Iowa and Wisconsin, but that has not been the case the last 2 years. They have held their own at the line of scrimmage with everybody, and I believe that part of the development is over with. They're fine there. They just got to stop stop making mistakes. But as far as the future, if the NFL goes to touch football, then I'll believe it. But there is no way in hell that the NFL is about gambling and violence, and probably who can make the playoffs, I guess, or I guess lately it's a bit about quarterbacks. But I mean, the NFL fan thrives on those things: gambling and violence. You will never take either one of those away. In fact, the gambling aspect of sports is about to explode, and you will now see leagues. Professional leagues will be leading the way in a lot of the gambling. But no, if I felt like, if college, they're going to do whatever the NFL does, because when it comes down to it, college football is about making money. It's about people in the stands, and they've got enough issues right now getting people to go to games. If you take away tackling, then you're going to have a few more holes in those seats. So I don't believe they will. But the danger here is they're taking it away from the practices, and it's actually it's more dangerous to have these kids not tackle in practice and then have to do it and hit and do all those violent things in games without the preparation for it. They don't know how to do it. They're not ready for it. They're going to get hurt more often in games than they were. So it's really misguided. The rules are about to instill. It's one of those sports where you either, I know we want to. There's a generation of people coming up that want to make everything safer and want to take care of this and that, and I don't really believe in the word woke, but it's more of a different attitude. Well, football is one of those sports where it won't work. You can't do it. You just have to leave it alone.
It's interesting. Everybody talks about you got to trust the science, but then when you hear this 8-9-8 rule and the limiting of certain practices and how many per week where you can have contact and not have contact and what kind of contact that you can have, and you question what the safety actually is and what the science behind an 8-9-8 rule really is. When I've said this for many years, going back to 2004, we talked about in the first segment. If you want to make the game safer, get rid of face masks or get rid of helmets, because that's going to take the head out of the game, much like it does in the sport of rugby. Now, whether or not that actually happens, I doubt, because I still think the helmet is the aesthetic part of the game of football. But you look at, there's a study by the University of New Hampshire where if you limit helmet contact, it's like 28% safer. But the product on the field in September typically is not all that good, going back to what you said just a moment ago. Another thing I want to follow up on what you said, Nebraska being physical, and you really notice that is in the line play. Do you think that for Scott Frost and company that growing the roster, not just in numbers, but in terms of actual physical size, that they have accomplished what they needed to be competitive consistently now in the Big Ten?
I do, and I do think that was one of the strong takeaways. The main takeaway in the spring was this looks like a football team now, a major college football team. They passed the eye test, coming off the bus or what have you. They've got size now. Their receivers look the part. It's sort of been a slow transformation, but that's how it goes. It's just the last piece of the puzzle, Bill, and the most baffling piece for me, as someone, and you were here before me, you're one of the original guys in the, Nebraska, the SID office and the press box, and you go back to the early 80s. I won't say you're older than that, but the Husker way is not 9 wins a year. It's not Fiesta Bowls and Orange Bowls. It's not the option. It's not even the run game. It's you play good, clean football. You don't make mistakes. Nebraska for years, we used to make fun when I was in Kansas City when we got covered other teams. They would always come to Nebraska and they lose by 40. But we used to make fun of Nebraska on the Big A. They were the robots. They had no personality. They didn't speak. They were machines. And they just never blinked. And I think about that now. Those days where Osborne never said anything, and Nebraska would just come out and just pound you early and just sit on top of you and just wear you down mentally and physically, because you couldn't make a mistake because Nebraska never did. When I think about those days now, that's how they're losing all these games now. And it blows my mind that that's the part of Nebraska football that when Peterson came and we all changed everything and so on and so forth, it's been the missing piece of their history that they just haven't replaced.
There's two games that always come to my mind. We're down to our final 2 minutes, Tom, and I appreciate you joining us. The Texas game where Nebraska lost, I think it was 27-24, was a great game. That game, back and forth. Texas was better, but Nebraska played well, still lost. And after the game's over with, Jamal Lord played heroically. People were, that was a great game, applauded both teams as they went off the field, and, too bad we lost. And I think that brought the home win streak to an end. Then there was that 7-3 win over Pitt one year when people were going, what the hell is going on here? And
right.
Nebraska fans know good football and can appreciate it when they lose, and they know bad football and have a problem with it even if you win. Right.
It's got to make sense. Everybody's a play caller, everybody's a coordinator. I get that. But the football their team has to play hard and appear to be well coached, well drilled, and it's just been so long since we've seen that. And I think to me that's again the missing piece of the Frost regime here, and I think a lot of that is leadership on the field. The players, it has to mean something. The pride, doing the job the right way, and it's hard to teach that, and that's what they've got to do now. And once they get that back, I think everything is going to flow.
The word you used in your column the other day was urgency. Do you get the sense that as cool and laid back as Scott Frost is, last question to you, do you get the sense that he understands that urgency now, and that that 8 and 9 win thing that Bill Moose is talking about is a much louder message than we realize? I do. This was one of the few times I've ever seen a coaching hire where the celebration and the overall parade came at the beginning. They hadn't done anything yet, and so a lot of that's worn off now, Bill. The people are looking at Scott like, okay, can you coach or not? What's going on here? I know Scott feels that. And so there were just little subtle things that came out this spring. The urgency stuff, you can hear it in their voices. They're rallying around special teams finally. They're slowing down the pace to make sure blocks are finished and the job is done right. I mean, these are good signs of progress, but we got to see them on the field this fall. And I like seeing those hats on those offensive linemen that say run the damn ball, because I think anybody from Nebraska would appreciate something like that. Tom, I appreciate your time. I guess I'm being counted out. I don't know how to do breaks anymore, but it's great to talk with you. You're awesome, and we'll talk again soon. Well, call me. We've got the Olympic curling trials next fall. Give me a call. I'm there. See you later. All right, Matt. See you.
Chime in 402 888-466-ESPN or email the show, Chris@HailVarsity.com.
Just try me. Try me.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
I'm Chris Schmidt today, traveling with family. Bill Doleman sitting in. This is an Average Joe Sports Show coup on Hail Varsity Radio for the afternoon. Chris will be back tomorrow, but you will have a chance to hear from him a little bit later on because he does have a conversation with Gary Barnett coming up, as well as Danny Burke in the second hour of the show. Mike Reilley, Lincoln Northeast grad and good friend, Nebraska grad, who is creating a media consulting empire for himself, as I'm finding out, in the city of Chicago, will be joining us. And we will be talking a little Average Joe Sports Show and probably some Hallmark movies with Riles coming up in hour number 2. Just got done talking with Tom Shatel of the Omaha Herald, who is one of the really great columnists in the country. And I mean that sincerely. Tom is a friend. But when you go around, you travel around, you read newspapers, what's left of, unfortunately, Tom does a fantastic job in covering all aspects and giving you a real good objective opinion. He seems pretty, Damon Barr joining it, seems fairly positive, as if Nebraska's a bye, at least in terms of prospects for the coming season. May not be an 8 or 9 win team, as Bill Moose is saying, but I think everything's on the rise.
I'm definitely seeing the physicality thing kind of coming back up to where we want it to. You know, I saw something funny that said, like, the 2020s are going to be the decade of sloppy tackling, and it was based on those no pads in practice rules. But I think Nebraska is returning to kind of that strong mentality, and that's something that I really like to see. It gives me a little bit of hope that they'll turn things around.
You know, people say that if you really want to watch, where football is won, where football is lost, you got to watch in the trenches. And I have tried to do that over the years, having watched the Pipeline back in the 90s do what it did. And again, no Nebraska offensive line should be dubbed as the Pipeline until it proves itself to be worthy of the Pipeline. And I will also tell you that goes for the black shirts as well. But I did watch from my 1 millionth row vantage point at Memorial Stadium on Saturday, and I agree. Nebraska looks like a different, and I'm saying looks like a different football team size-wise. I think Zach Duvall has done probably what he has set out to do, and that's to make this team bigger and stronger. And now the key is get them nastier. I saw a Facebook post from a former Nebraska football player on Sunday after he watched the spring game, and he said that, is it Nash Hutmacher? Yeah, the big guy. Reminded him of Christian Peter. My first reaction was, yes. My second reaction was, yikes. I mean, Henry was around Christian and Jason and Jared Homage and Grant Wistrom and those guys back in those days. That's pretty high praise, but yikes. But if Nebraska's got guys like that along the defensive and offensive lines, then there's a chance. And I think you started to see that a little bit toward the end of last year. I know things didn't go well against Minnesota, and it was completely embarrassing. I know things did not go well against Illinois, and that was embarrassing as well. But I think for the most part, when you saw the line play, and I'll even go into the Ohio State game, the first game of last year, 52-17. I know that did not go our way, Nebraska's way. But even in that game, there were semblances of way this team looks different. And it also, by looking different, looks familiar. That there is some size, there's some beef along the lines. Is there the nastiness? Well, we're going to find out as this season plays out. But I agree with Tom. It's not just rebuilding the roster and making it into what the kind of team Scott Frost wants. It's building a team that looks like a Nebraska football team. And I think that those strides are being made. So much so that I don't think everything in the spring games necessarily had all of its attention directed toward, what Adrian Martinez was doing. I think there was so much more happening on the field that was good and positive that gives reason for hope, and maybe gives reason for Bill Moose to say 8 or 9 wins.
Bill, you brought up beef, and I think that's a perfect segue into our Memorial Day kickoff giveaway with
Nice.
Capital Patio and Flame Shop. Your chance to get qualified to win a Weber Spirit E210 gas grill, Weber tea brush, and Capital Patio rub from Capital Patio and the Flame Shop. A $100 gift certificate from Leon's Gourmet Grocers, and a $100 gift card to Campbell's Nursery. We'll get you qualified later this hour. Next segment, you'll hear the infamous music bed with the grill sound that Chris says sounds like his wife ready to electrocute him. But we'll get you qualified end of this hour and end of next hour. Just thought I'd plug that a little here in this segment.
What a segue. Nice job. Well played. You still have the Beef Club at Nebraska?
I can't say I've been a part of such a club. I don't see any posters for it on campus, so I reckon to say no.
Boy, you are a youngin'. Now, I don't know if they still have the Beef Club or not. My guess is that they probably do. I would think Dave Ellis, who is the greatest sports nutritionist in the history of the business, in fact, like Boyd Epley, pretty much invented the genre. Let me just tell you this: the Beef Club. Those are ranchers out in Nebraska that would donate, brontosaurus size, sides of beef to the athletic department to feed guys at the training table. It's like everybody, ate like Fred Flintstone, right? Let me just tell you this: I'm playing in a scramble back in, I don't know, 94, 95, 96, 97, somewhere when I was hosting the Tom Osborne show. And they have these scrambles all around the state of Nebraska in small towns like David City and Shickley and Broken Bow and Columbus and whatnot. And I think we were in David City having this scramble. We got a call coming in here real quick. And this guy brings in this huge-ass oil drum grill. You all got one. I know everybody's got a friend that has one of those kind of grills, right? So they wheeled this thing into this golf course. It might have been a 9-hole golf course. That's how small the town was, kind of like Fairbury. And guy brings in a side of beef, fresh steaks. To this day, the greatest piece of meat steak I have ever had in my entire life. Served on paper plates, plasticware, A1 steak sauce, which was not needed. The coleslaw slopped on the plate, still by far the best steak I have ever had in my life. All right, who's on the phone?
All right, Jason, we got 30 seconds. What's up, man?
Hey, Bill, tell us about, I've been a longtime fan of you and Schmidt back in the Average Joe Sports days. You know that. Bill, it's good to hear your voice. Tell us next hour about what it's like at NBC and Olympic Channel or whatever. And were you in a Denver mattress commercial last year?
Look, Jason, I'm eye candy, all right?
Of course.
Yeah, that was me. Obviously, you noticed me and not Annie, the beautiful blonde spokesperson for Denver's matches, but that's why I'm there.
Yeah, she's
I'm
a pretty
there
gal.
to draw the eyes, all right? I'm eye candy. I get it. Jason, thanks for the call. Great to hear from you. Got to take a break. More with Hail Varsity Radio after this.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Welcome back to it, Hail Varsity Radio. Bill Doleman taking over for Chris Schmidt today, and me, Damon Barr, producing the show. Just right away this segment, you heard me give a little reminder, our Memorial Day kickoff, your chance to win a Weber Spirit E210 gas grill, Weber tea brush, and Capital Patio rub from Capital Patio and Flame Shop, $100 gift certificate from Leon's Gourmet Grocers, and a $100 Campbell's Nursery gift card. We will announce our grand prize winner on Friday, May 21st. Listen for your chance to win it if you qualify. But let's go ahead and get you qualified right here. There's the sound of that grill. Caller number 9, you will be our lucky qualifier today. Caller number 9, 402-466-3776, 1-800-825-5865. I'm going to send it back over to Bill while I grab these phone calls. Bill?
Damon Barr, handling the phones, hanging out with me today on Hail Varsity Radio, the Average Joe Sports Show edition. Jason called in the last segment and mentioned, I've done some Denver mattress commercials in the past. What of it? I'm eye candy. I get it, all right? He also asked about NBC Sports and the Olympic Channel and NBCSN. Don't have much time left in this hour. We've got a couple of interviews in the second hour coming up, along with Mike Reilley, good friend from the Average Joe Sports Show days. But I will just say this. NBC has been incredibly good to me, and I've had the opportunity to call probably 15 different sports, I think, over the last 3 or 4 years with NBC. I'll be blessed to work another, my third Olympics coming up in July 23rd through August 8th or something like that. And what they have nowadays is a lot of the staff is actually in Stamford, Connecticut, at the mothership, if you will, of NBC Sports, where the headquarters is, where if you watch Sunday Night Football, where the studio shows are done, where NHL hockey is done, and all of that. So spend my Olympics in Stamford and thoroughly love it there. That's where I did the 2016 and the 2018. But what they do for a lot of the sports that I covered, just to kind of give you an idea, is there are broadcast entities overseas that shoot the video, disseminate it via satellite. It comes down to whichever country broadcasting it wants to pull it down. And we put it on the air, and that's just the way the business has been going. And as if you watch sports right now and you see all these folks in their basements, which is where I am right now, and they're doing it out of their home offices. We've been doing that at NBC for probably 3 or 4 years now. So what those guys are trying to get used to is kind of old hat for all of us. But love doing all those sports. And I'll tell you, the appreciation for those Olympic sports for me grew out of being a part of the Nebraska athletic department back in the 1980s and in the 90s, and seeing not just what Tom Osborne's football teams were all about, but seeing Nebraska wrestling, Nebraska gymnastics with Francis Allen, Cal Bench swimming and diving, you name it. The variety of sports at the University of Nebraska provided a background for me to be able to have the great experiences with NBC that I have had. So it is quite the operation. Technically, it's an incredible place to go. And it's been great opportunities to be a part of Olympic coverage the last summer and winter games, and looking forward to the summer coming up. Sorry, did you get already qualified for your little group giveaway?
Yeah, Kurt just qualified, and we'll have another chance for you guys to qualify next hour.
All right, Kurt, way to go. We're going to take a break right now. When we come back, Schmitty will be back in the chair visiting with Gary Barnett after this.
Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery, Hour 2. And again, big thanks to Bill Doleman for sitting in. We say hi to the coach, Gary Barnett, Colorado Northwestern Hall of Famer. Coach, how was the spring weekend in Boulder?
Well, we had great weather, and it was a shortened sort of scrimmage more than anything else. They did a lot of situations. They've, like a lot of guys, a lot of teams, they're down in numbers. They don't have the walk-on prowessness that you have at Nebraska. So, they probably only had 60 kids practicing. But it was good. It was effective. I think Carl thought they got a lot done. Showcased both quarterbacks a little bit. And at this point in time, everybody's excited to play the last practice and get it over with and be safe. And so I think that was sort of the tone. I think they had 500 people in the stadium. And, we just did a sort of talk over as things went on, and occasionally talk about what was taking place on the field itself. But we talked more about the players and the situations in the past summer and that sort of stuff. So it was good. It was, we streamed it, and it was fine.
So I got to ask you, does Ralphie make an appearance for the spring game?
Well, Ralphie, no. The answer is short is no, but Ralphie is retired. So they're working like crazy trying to get Ralphie trained for the fall. And because of protocols in Boulder County, they're having a little trouble actually getting practice time in. So I think it's a little iffy whether Ralphie even makes it to the first game.
Wow. That's unique.
Yeah.
Usually you see Ralphie doing her thing or his thing, running out of the tunnle there. Gary Barnett's
her thing.
Always
they're
her.
They're all hers.
Okay. Well, I know that. Good to know now. So Nebraska's spring practice, it was just kind of a thud session the first half. Second half there was tackling. And it was fine, and Nebraska showed some flashes by some of the kids you're kind of waiting on that have been in the program, right? Nebraska's big thing is the lines of scrimmage, and is there going to be a pass rush? And I want to get your take on this, and Bill Moose was talking about it, Nebraska's athletic director, when it comes to the NCAA and safety and concerns for athlete safety and tackling and contact. And Coach, what's the right answer with tackling? How much to do? Getting your kids ready for real tackle football that's going to happen on Saturdays, but also keeping them safe and the cumulative effect of hits and tackles, and obviously being concerned about their long-term health and welfare with the contact that is tackle football. And what's going to happen, I guess, is my question. What's the right answer? If you were the college football czar, what's the happy medium, or where would you go with this?
Well, football is in a pretty critical little bind right now, and that is the health and safety of student athletes. In this day and age, that is priority one. And so, the tone of the age, the tone of the times dictates what's right. Mm-hmm. And the tone right now is to be more cautious, safer. Mental health is a huge national issue, and anything that can reduce mental health issues and reduce injuries that could and have been sort of shown in a lot of studies to bring on mental health issues, then you have a responsibility to limit. And so I think that, we did the things that were right back when in the 60s that based on the times. And right now the times say you better be more cautious, you better err on the side of safety. And that's the right thing to do. And I think the wrong thing to do would be to probably, get too upset about it and throw the baby out with the bathwater or cut your nose off, spite your face. You just can't do it. The game, it's a difficult game. Considering the times, I think we're all lucky that we still get to play football. And you just got to go along with what the people that are in control making the decisions think is right. And they're not trying to purposely change the game and make it worse. They're trying to make it better and safer, and you got to go along with it. So, coaches are going to be at one extreme, and doctors and parents are going to be at the other extreme. So somewhere in between, and right now it's moving further away from the coaches and what they want, and closer to what doctors and I think mental health officials think it should be and should be done. They're not trying to eliminate it; they're just trying to make it safer. And you got to give them credit for that. And it doesn't do you much good as a coach to complain about it. You have to, you got to make lemonade out of lemons, and you just went through a pandemic. You found a way to make that work. You'll find a way to make this work if it does change that much.
Gary Barnett's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Let's talk about making it work for being a good tackling team on Saturday. Coach, how do you prep your guys? Say you're down to 1 day of contact, and that may be the case in some programs and some conferences anyway. But repetition is going to make you better for Saturdays, and what's going to prepare you for Saturdays against a Michigan or an Ohio State, a Northwestern, from a physicality standpoint. You want to try and match or exceed your opponent's physicality. You know, what can you do to be ready for Saturday when contact is going to be limited? What do you do as a coach? Obviously make the most of your reps, but does it kind of go back into high school with who you're bringing in?
Well, I think that's one thing, but Chris, everybody's going to have the same rules. So if Michigan is more physical, it's because they recruited more physical players that are naturally, inherently more physical. So I got the point when they started limiting our tackling. I started looking for guys who could naturally tackle in space, and I would take a player that was a step slow, that could just have the instincts to tackle, over a guy who couldn't tackle. And I just felt like it was going in that direction. And you got to remember, only half your team has to tackle. Now the other guys may have to tackle on interceptions and field goals that don't make it, and the guy runs it back. That's always a problem, no matter what, because those guys don't ever tackle in practice anyway. So only half your team has to tackle. And when you think about it, really the guys in space are the ones that are most of the issue. And so now you're down to secondary and linebackers, and usually outside linebackers. So, you can figure that out. And tackling is a lot of instinct. And I really do think that a lot of defensive players are instinctive tacklers. The best ones are instinctive tacklers. So it's not like you have to take all 180 guys and make them good tacklers or better tacklers. You really only have to take about 20. So you got to figure out ways to do that. Coaches came up with all these drills. They talked to the rugby community and got rugby coaches to come in and teach them how to tackle. Now I've watched all those drills everywhere, and I don't think I ever recall somebody making a rugby tackle in a game because it's not instinctive. You can go out and show me how to putt left-hand low, but I can't putt left-hand low. So, it's different. It's I can practice it and practice it and practice it, and you know what? It just doesn't work for me. So I think the same thing happens. You can do these drills to sort of cover your fanny, but in the end, a guy's going to go tackle the way he's instinctively made to tackle. So I think you just got to live with it. You got to make lemonade out of lemons, find a way to make it work, and go on. And of course, every school that doesn't tackle well, we use that as an excuse at the end of the game or at the end of the season. We had a poor tackling year because we couldn't practice it. And whether that's really true or not, I don't know. So, you just got to go with it.
Got to adapt and adjust. Gary Barnett's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, last time we talked, we were wondering about the Kansas job, Lance Leipold getting the nod. And what's your reaction? What do you know about Lance, and what's kind of his rep?
Well, Lance in the coaching world has a really good reputation, I might add. I mean, everybody that I know that knows him really thinks he's an outstanding football coach. And, you asked me if anybody would take that job, and I said, sure. I mean, you jump from a lower level to a Power 5 team, you're going to do it, especially considering where things are going in football now. So it didn't surprise me that Lance took that job. I think in the long run, it's probably the right move. You just have to jumpstart it somehow. Hiring a guy off Les's staff was not going to jumpstart it. It was just going to calm the waters a little bit. But this needs, one of those treatments in the ER room when they say clear, and the whole electric shock goes into your system. So, overall, that's the way I see it from a distance. I don't personally know Lance, but I know lots of coaches that do, and they really do admire him.
What challenges did you have? And I don't know what you did with Northwestern or Colorado when it comes to staff. How much staff you brought with you from one place to another, or what you wanted to do when you were assembling that initial staff. But what was kind of your rule of thumb? How hard was it to keep a guy or leave a guy when you were making a move? That's my question. When you make that jump from a group of 5 to a power 5, going and hiring the best or keeping guys that have been with you throughout the trek.
Well, it's a combination, and when you go to make a move like this, you have to make it a business situation, and that is. You've worked with all your coaches. You know their strengths and their weaknesses. You know the guys that you absolutely feel like you have to have with you. And those are the guys you take. Everybody else is in that business. They know this can happen any moment, and they will adapt. They will be okay. So, but that's hard. It's real hard as a coach because these guys have worked. Some of them have been with you for a long time and have worked really hard for you. But when you go take another job, you got to think about that next job. You can't think about the last one. And what's it going to take? You have this chance. You have this chance to do this once. Okay. Now, the difficulty in changing at this point in time is you don't have a lot of choices outside of your staff, other than the guys that exist at Kansas, because most guys are set in their ways, right? Set where they are. They don't want to pack their family up in the middle of May and make a move. They feel pretty loyal. But that being said, there's always a couple guys who wish they were somewhere else and are willing to do that. So you got to be careful with it. But this is about hand-picking the guys you want to start digging a trench with. And it's critical that in your mind you bring the right guys. And, first thing you hire, I think, is a strength coach. The second thing you hire is you probably get your 2 coordinators. Third thing, you want to make sure your trainer's the right guy. And fourth, you want to make sure your academic guy's the right guy. And then you go out from there. So you get one chance to do this.
Gary Barnett's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Coach, last thought. Thanks for spending time with us today. And interested, how would you approach scholarships and what would you allocate for the portal versus high school? Would you reserve 5 spots for portal transfer versus high school kids coming in? How would you approach that?
Well, I'm just watching it from a distance, and I heard Carl Durrell talk about it, and talk to other coaches, and I think it's like going to a junior college, is what it is. You're going to handpick somebody for one reason and for one position. So it's, to me, you use it like you would use junior college situations. Where do we really need somebody? What position do we really need somebody? And that's when you go to the portal. You used to go to junior colleges. Now I think you go to the portal first. So I don't think I would necessarily do a percentage, but it would boil down to how many junior college guys do I think I need to take this year? And then I go to the portal first to get that number. If I can't get that number through the portal, then I'd go to the junior college after that to fill that number. So somewhere, who knows? It would change from year to year.
How much golf are you playing this weekend?
Well, just a normal amount. But I'm in a slump right now, so I got to have a little talk with myself.
I'm sure you'll get out of it.
Unfortunately, I think I'm talking to myself too much.
You're just talking a lot. Well, crank up the smoker and have a Corona and enjoy your weekend.
Chris.
Coach, take care. Thanks again for the time.
You bet. Talk later.
There he is, Gary Barnett with us on Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks to Chris Schmidt for leaving us that one. Bill Doleman, Damon Barr taking care of Hail Varsity on a Thursday. Next up, Mike Reilley, reunion of the Average Joe Football Show. We are presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Welcome back to Hail Varsity Radio. I'm Bill Doleman. Damon Barr is in, just from Chris Schmidt and Gary Barnett a few moments ago. And Chris will be visiting with Danny Burke a little bit later on. Right now, it is time to do the Average Joe Sports Show version of Hail Varsity Radio. And pleased to welcome in and rejoin good friend Mike Reilley, the pride of Lincoln Northeast and the pride of Fairbury, on the air together again. Riles, how are you?
Doing great, Bill. It's good to be back. We're putting the band back together.
Yeah, we just need the kegger to roll in.
Yeah, we need to call the keg in and Schmitty weighing in, and we've got it put together. We got to do that round table again one of these days. We'll carve out a Monday and we'll all get on. It'd be a good time. Those are good times.
Just get on. Let's just get together. We'll get together over there on Cornhusker Highway. We'll bring Mike Babcock in, and we'll talk pro wrestling, old school pro wrestling for like 2 hours. It'll be gold, solid gold, Jerry.
Oh, those were some legendary shows. Those are always a good time. It's never a dull moment when we had Mike on. Sipple would stop by. You never know who was going to stop by. We had some really wild stories back then. I mean, that was the Callahan era. That was all the coaching changes before that, and the 7-7 season, and things were really in disarray back then. So we had a lot to talk about.
Yeah, we're talking about the Average Joe Sports Show, which we started on ESPN 1480 back about 2003, 2004, just because there was like the hour and the programming day where we didn't have anything to do. So we decided, well, let's just do something local. And so just got buddies around and did what everybody else does when they get together at the local sports pub and sat around the table and talked. The best parts, though, were, Riles, in the middle of the summer when nothing was going on, and unfortunately there'd be a pro wrestler from the 1960s or 70s that might pass away, which led to legendary conversations about Ivan Putski, the Crusher, Baron von Raschke from Omaha South. Those were the days.
Oh, yeah, it was legendary. DeadWrestlers.com was our friend back then. And, we had Tim Newman. We had Tim Newman on, too. One day he was in the studio with us. I remember we were talking pro wrestling with him. It was great.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about what else has been going on with you. You have created a media consulting empire in Chicago, and it basically worked for every, I believe, college in the city of Chicago, and will probably be starting your own college in Chicago to continue your media empire. But I'm finding it interesting, Riles, and I do think about you when with the changing landscape in media, and especially in sports media and the direction it's going, because back in the day it was the Journal Star and the World Herald, USA Today, and then you might get some national writers or reporters that would come in. But now you've got things like Outkick, Bleacher Report, Barstool Sports, The Athletic, and now, but you also see, Riles, where those independent entities are all of a sudden being corporatized. There's talk today about The Athletic, being sold, that sale not going through, Outkick going to Fox, Bleacher Report with CBS. What on earth is the media landscape today, and what's it going to be like?
Yeah, a lot of it started, back in the mid-1990s when we first started to make that shift to digital. At that time, there were so many large media companies swallowing up. Disney was purchasing everything inside. ESPN, everything else. Tribune Company was rolling right along and buying up parts of AOL and other things. And now you're seeing some of that older media really struggling. But they see these upstarts. I mean, The Athletic has just such a wonderful business model. I've had several of my friends leave sports writing at ESPN and the Trib and other places to go to work for The Athletic. It's no wonder they're going to be purchased. And they were really came along at just the right time. They had a new approach to journalism, sports journalism, with a lot of the analytics and the data analysis that other media just weren't doing quite yet. So they really, and plus they got a little lucky with some of the markets they chose. One of them was Chicago. It was the year the Cubs won the World Series. So they've come along and really, carved out a nice niche for themselves. Bleacher Report has come a long way. Sports Nation with Vox has done some really fabulous stuff. I've got a couple of friends that work there. So, most of my friends that have worked at the Tribune, except for Paul Sullivan, the baseball writer, have gone. They've gone to work for betting sites. Teddy Greenstein, who covered the Big Ten for years, works for a sports betting site now doing golf. Casey Johnson, who covered the Bulls for many years, he's at NBC Sports Chicago. So a lot of those, existing traditional media outlets can't afford to keep, veteran sports writers around, and they're searching for a business model that works, and they're not finding it. The venture capitalists are coming in, and the hedge funds with Alden Global just coming in and buying up anything in sight. Large newspapers, they're buying. Be careful about who buys you too, because they can also come in and pull Gordon Gekko and just take you apart, and that's happening in a lot of places.
Well, that's kind of my question and my concern in taking a look at the sports media landscape, where you do have some independents out there, but when you see the Athletic wanting, the Axios thing is apparently going to go through and now not go through, and you might see them merge with, I thought I saw the New York Times or something. I don't know what it was, but and then with Outkick and Fox Sports or CBS having influence perhaps over Bleacher Report, do you worry that the independence of sports journalism might have peaked and it's going to go back into a corporate shell, and you will write what you're told to write, when, and how?
But there's always going to be a new invention. The other thing we're also seeing, Bill, is we're also seeing independent sports journalists go out and establish their own brands. You're seeing that with columnists on news side, too. They have their own followings. They're starting Substacks, the newsletter organization. I've got a Substack off my website, Journalist Toolbox. And you can set up your own income level. So I think there will always be some independence there, either through new startups that are hoping to be purchased, and that's always the goal. If you're going to start this independent, upstart, sports entity, you want it to be purchased. I mean, because the founders are going to, line their pockets. That's just how it works. But they're also going to have these independent journalists who are out there establishing their own brands. Chris Dufresne did this late in his career when he retired from the LA Times. He got together with a couple other college football writers and started a blog, and then evolved into a website with the goal of it being purchased one day. So that's that business model out there now. We weren't taught entrepreneurial journalism when we were in journalism school. It just didn't exist. We had to kind of learn it on the fly as we went. But yeah, I think there will always be an independent voice there, which has been great to see over the years. Sports Nation and some of these, started as just these small entities. Barstool Sports, God, used to be just nothing. It's a groundswell of, for better or worse, with some of their social media presence. Is really groundswelled, and that makes them, very, very fruitful for these companies that are looking to buy entities that will drive traffic and social media attention to their larger brands, and that's the business model now. Love it or hate it, that's how it works.
Now, let me ask you about one of the journalism stories of the day by a journalist making the story himself, and that's the Adam Schefter, Aaron Rodgers thing. I'm guessing you may have followed it just a little bit, given that Green Bay and Chicago pretty much hate each other. But I thought it was interesting listening to his comments. I didn't listen to the entire interview with Dan Patrick, but I listened to the segment where he asked him about the releasing of the story with Aaron Rodgers wanting out of Green Bay. And Schefter said today, the ESPN senior NFL writer, said, well, it wasn't anything new. It was an accumulation of all the information that we've been gathering over the off season, and it just so happened that I decided to release it on draft day. Like there was some innocence to it. Okay, you've got a story, but you have nothing new, but you have dictated as to when the nothing new story is going to come out. What do you make of it?
Yeah, the timing of it, when it first came out, I was like, oh, how convenient, right before the draft. My first hunch was that this was Rodgers and his agent, orchestrating this because they wanted to get him out of there. It's weird, having covered beats before, and I had this long talk with Casey Johnson years ago. He was actually accused of sitting on a story by Jim Gray about a fight between Vinny Del Negro and John Paxson that became physical. Gar Foreman was involved as well with the Bulls. And Casey goes, I wasn't sitting on the story. He goes, I just didn't have it fully confirmed yet. There were some things that I hadn't pinned down yet. So I don't know, Schefter's reporting style or what, maybe there were some things, some loose ends that he hadn't had confirmed yet. So I'm not going to go after him, based on when he released it, because maybe he still had something to pin down in it that we just don't know about. But it sounded like he'd been gathering a lot of information on this, the series of texts with his other teammates, that chat, where he was calling him Jerry Krause, which we loved in Chicago. We're loving all this here, by the way. It's the only thing we have to cheer for right now. Really, literally, it's a dumpster fire here as far as sports. We're pitting our hopes on Aaron Rodgers leaving and Justin Fields, being our only hope. He's our Obi-Wan Kenobi. But it just depends on when he had it pinned down. And I don't know. I've heard bits and pieces of the Dan Patrick interview today. I want to hear the whole thing because it sounded like there were some loose ends there that he really needed to tie up. But the timing of this, all from the very beginning was very suspicious. Was it coming from the Rodgers camp or was it coming from the ESPN camp? Like, we're going to drop a bomb on Green Bay right before, the day before the draft begins. But there were talks going on. That was confirmed out of San Francisco that the Niners were talking to them. So there was truth to this. But I thought the timing of a lot of it was very peculiar.
It just seemed like that he's in his cubby and at ESPN with his head down for several weeks, and then looked up on Groundhog Day and released their story. And but it's draft day, and our network has a significant stake in how well the draft goes for us. And I had no idea, but. Anyway, Rouse, we're down to our final couple of minutes, and really this should be a 2-hour documentary with the two of us, so we do have to do this again at some point. So I'm not sure which direction to go with you, because I know you and I love to discuss the latest Hallmark Channel movie, but apparently that's not going to happen. And now I've got 45 seconds, so I guess I have to ask you, because you mentioned Justin Fields. So we'll save the Hallmark movies for later, and we'll discuss that at another time. Real quick. Is Justin Fields a sugar high or a long-lasting Rocky Mountain high?
I think he's going to pan out. I really do. I liked him in college. He has the size. He can take off running. He is a good fit for the Matt Nagy offense. The one thing is people here are trying to rush him. He's got to start day one. Give him a little time. Let him develop. Throw Andy Dalton out there, Nick Foles, whoever you want. But bring him along. Don't throw him to the wolves. Keep in mind he's going to have a rookie left tackle and probably a rookie right tackle you're protecting him, and that's not a good situation to be in. They cut Charles Leno 2 days after the draft, which I think was a huge mistake. They need to bring Tevin Jenkins along a little bit slower. But Justin could play, and he is a good fit for that offense. Of course, we were saying that 4 years ago with somebody named Mitch Trubisky, too. So what do we know about quarterbacks in Chicago?
Well, here's this, and we got to say goodbye, Riles, and it's great talking to you. He's in a much better situation than Jordan Love is in Green Bay, because if Aaron Rodgers goes, Jordan Love is going to be the most hated hometown quarterback in the history of the NFL. Riles, love you. Great talking to you. Let's do this again sometime when we have an Average Joe Sports Show coup on Hail Varsity Radio once again.
Take care, man.
See you, Riles. All right, back with more. Chris Schmidt talks with Danny Burke after this.
Now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it at Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. And Bill Doleman's been taking you a lot of the way today, sitting in on Hail Varsity. We welcome in the pride of Chicago is Danny Burke. Burke's Best Bets, VSiN Sports Network is where you hear him. Over 100 affiliates strong. And the VSiN Sports Network, also iHeartMedia, at Danny Burke 5 on Twitter. Pride of Chicago, are you sleeping one off, brother? I'm kind of kidding, but not really. Your Cubbies with the sweep.
Schmitty, it's just so ridiculous. This is the most Cubs thing of all time, because you know that they're just going to lose 2 out of 3 against the Pirates right after they just swept the Dodgers, because that would be the most Cubs thing of all time. And hand up, I bet on the Dodgers that last game, and that was so infuriating. Los Angeles just refused to win that game. And even after Jock Peterson, pimped the home run that was only a sac fly, somehow they still won, where I feel like for the baseball gods, if you do that, you deserve to lose. But that's how frustrating the Dodgers have been as of late. But no, the Cubs are just going to get everybody's hopes up till they inevitably let them down soon enough.
I love that. Pimped that. Danny, how long did you ever pimp a home run?
I couldn't when I was last hitting home runs because I don't think we had fences in some of the parks, so I still had to run my butt off before I got thrown out. But if I'm playing with friends now, then yeah, I'll do it. Or maybe even 16-inch if we're playing a really crappy team, then I'll pimp it occasionally. But usually I got to hustle a little bit more so.
You got to pimp that wiffle ball bomb. You just got to do it. I love it. So, Danny, let's get into the NFL draft. And how did the draft treat you financially, my friend?
For my pocket, honestly, it wasn't the best because the Bengals pretty much is the team that ended up screwing me, Schmitty, because I've had them to select an offensive lineman, and as we know, they went with Chase. And that was kind of the thought process for a lot of people as we got closer and closer that they were going to go with Chase. I still think they should have went with Sewell. I know, a GM, I think, was a report said out of this draft class or whatever, he's like the for sure Hall of Famer is going to be Sewell. Like right now, the guy who is going to be the top dog for sure is going to be Sewell. And that was the need that the Bengals really had to get. And granted, they did in the second round, Schmitty, but still, I just thought it was ridiculous that they passed them up. But that's what Zach Taylor's going to do, and I'm sure Joe Burrow had a lot of influence in wanting to get his teammate. Nevertheless, overall we did pretty okay. I kind of bounced back with a little late bets with some of the in-draft kind of selections that you could do later on with what some teams need because you kind of understood what their second or third pick was going to be just based on those necessities. So that was kind of a fun thing to do. But, overall, Schmitty, hey, we were just ecstatic about Justin Fields coming to Chicago, baby.
I know you are, and I saw that. And between you and Greg and St. Nick, all the Bears people, Suitsy, there's a bunch of you Bears fans that wear it on your sleeve, and you don't ever waver. And I'm happy you got a quarterback. I think Fields is fantastic. I hope it flourishes for him because Chicago's a lot of fun, and the Bears and the NFL are better when the Bears don't suck, right? And they're just not a headache. So tell me what your immediate takeaway is here. What's been the reaction where you're at in Chicago, and specifically, what's the timeline here? Is he mid-season starter? Do you throw him in? Do you let him battle? I know we're getting cart before the horse here, but how do you treat this year so he doesn't go the way of many former quarterbacks in Chicago?
So it was funny, leading up to the draft, the more people I had on my show that we were talking about it, I kind of kept bringing it up like, hey, what's the realistic chance that the Bears trade up for a quarterback? And most people consensusly were like, yeah, I think it's pretty good. They're going to be in the sweepstakes for it. And I couldn't muster up the courage to actually pull the trigger on them selecting a quarterback with the first pick. I think it was at about 4-1 odds. So not the greatest because it was popular opinion that they could do that. And look, Pace had to do it, Schmitty. Like to save his job, to keep his tenure going, along with the rest of his front office and Nagy, they needed to make a big move. It doesn't matter the haul they gave up because, one, if it works out, it doesn't matter, and two, if it doesn't, Pace isn't going to be here to suffer the consequences, so he doesn't have to deal with it. But I think this is the first time, too, in my life that after a Bears draft pick in the first round, everybody unanimously was happy and cheering like the war had just ended or something. Like everybody in Chicago was just so elated that this occurred because that was the last hope. And once they made that trade, you knew it had to be Justin Fields. If it was Mac Jones, I don't think you would have had that consensus happiness from every Bears fan. But no, everybody's excited. I don't think he's going to be the starter out of the gate. Very early speculation, but I feel like it's going to be what happened with Trubisky and Glennon, where Glennon gets a few games. You realize, why are we paying this dude who's not really that good? Let's put in the guy that we drafted, and that's going to be the same thing that happens. Albeit I do think that Dalton's a lot better than Mike Glennon, and I think Dalton is serviceable, but it'll only be a matter of time for Fields to come in, which was interesting because they have Offensive Rookie of the Year odds posted, and at first, Fields was second behind Trevor Lawrence, but it was like, why would you bet that if you don't even know if you're going to get a full season out of Justin Fields? And they had Zach Wilson at about 10-1. He finally moved down to 7-1. But if you're looking at something like that, make sure the guy you're betting on, so not Fields, not Trey Lance, are for sure going to be the starter. So that was kind of an interesting market to look into. But, hey, the sooner Fields is in the mix, the better for us here in Chi-Town.
Danny Burke with us, Burke's Best Bets, his show Rush Hour, 6 to 7 weeknights on VSiN Sports Network, iHeartMedia. So let's get into the Browns and Chargers specifically when it comes to some totals and futures there. They had decent drafts. Of course, Hymas we spoke with this week. He's off to La La Land with the Chargers. But before we get into Rodgers odds here, a couple seconds here on just Cleveland and the Chargers and what they said to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Browns arguably had the next best draft. I mean, biased a little bit, obviously, with the Bears. I mean, I think they had a great draft, too. But, look, the Browns really addressed their needs, especially defensively. I mean, Greg Newsome, a really great get. And the list just kind of kept going on and on for Cleveland. And that division in the AFC North is very wide open for them. I do think the Ravens are still the top team because they also had a really good draft, especially with those 2 first-round picks with the defensive or the linebacker and then a wide receiver. But Cleveland's going to be right there. So I think Cleveland, if you're looking at their win total of 10.5, a little bit of plus money could be a good play. But more importantly, Schmitty, yeah, I really liked what the Chargers did, too. I think this is a team that's going to make some noise. They have a very favorable schedule. Their win total's at 9. I think they could for sure get over that. I mean, they're picking up Rashawn Slater, a guy that, a lot of people thought maybe wouldn't even fall that far. Then you also get Asante Samuel Jr., who could be a stud, and like you said, Hymas. So I think the Chargers are going to be a team, if they can stay healthy defensively with Derwin James and company, which has been the issue. We saw what Herbert's capable of doing. I really like the Chargers over their win total of 9. And if you want them to make the playoffs or think they do, the yes is plus 149 with the expanded postseason. That might not be too bad of a play.
Danny Burke's with us, Hail Varsity Radio at Burke's Best Bets, Danny Burke 5 on Twitter. Pride of Chicago, Rodgers ends up where? Talk to me about this Green Bay saga, bud, about 45 seconds.
I mean, look, if you asked me 2 days ago, I'd say I have absolutely no idea. And I still relatively don't, but with the Jerry Krause report that came out where he's calling his GM Jerry Krause, I really just don't think it's going to work out with the Packers. The Packers are minus 134 for him to remain there. The Broncos, as a lot of people have touted as being the top team, they're the next short shot at plus 150. Broncos seem like the most likely option if Green Bay's going to trade him to get him out of the conference. 49ers would have made more sense originally, but I think they got denied when they first gave the offer to Green Bay. But maybe now because they have the quarterback package, something could happen. The Raiders, I don't think they come in at 9-1. Don't think that's going to be viable per se. Saints would be, but the Saints are going to have to give up a haul, and they're at 12-1. So for me, it's going to be Broncos, if anything. It's indicated by the odds and reports that if Rodgers is going to dip, it's going to be there.
Well, we'll see. It'll be after June probably, so we got a whole month of Rodgers watch. Danny Burke, check him out, Rush Hour, iHeartMedia, VSiN Sports Network. Danny, we'll talk next week. Great to get caught up, bud.
Hey, you bet, Schmitty. Take care.
We'll qualify you up next. Memorial Day Kickoff, Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Miss us?
Come here, brother. Give me a hug. Bring it in for the real thing.
We're on call for you. Catch the podcast at hailvarsity.com, the ESPN Lincoln app, or download them on iTunes.
Saddle up, partner.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Winding down, it's time to say hi to Deb, the spa lady, Home Innovation Spas, 20th and Highway 2 off Industrial Road in Omaha, and spasonline.com. Deb, how was the hot tub show?
It was crazy. It was so good to actually see hot tubs that were for sale. And so we, of course, sold out of those, and we ordered more. But come in and see us. There's always a wait time, of course. But at least get your spa ordered and you get in line and get a spa in that backyard. A lot of people, their projects do take a few months. So if you pick something out, we'll get it on order, and who knows, when you're finished up with that project, we'll get it in your backyard.
Deb, the spa lady's with us. Home Innovation Spas, 20th and Highway 2 in Lincoln off Industrial Road in Omaha. Now, Deb, you've got that perfect spa for the backyard, for the basement, for the deck. You got a size that can fit any backyard setup, and I'm sure folks saw that at the spa show over the weekend. But tell folks when they can come see you and some of the specials you have going on.
Okay, we do. Like you said, Chris, we have everything from a little two-person spa up to the big swim spas that are 15 feet long, 18 feet long, 19 feet long. So everything in between. they can come see us. Our regular hours are 10 to 6 Monday through Friday, 10 to 4 on Saturday. But you can always go to our website. That's spasonline.com.
Well, those hours are perfect. And, Deb, I know folks got great deals from you over the weekend, and there's always, a budget folks need to hit, and you've been hitting that budget for years, haven't you?
That's right, and we also have the financing lined up, so we make it so affordable for everyone to have a spa.
So have you watched a Royals game in a spa yet this season?
I have not, but I need to because they're doing so good. I need to get my Salvi jersey out and start wearing it again.
Salvi needs his own, Royal spa from Deb. He's been carrying the team, man. His back's hurting him.
He's got, golly, and he's always so positive. What a great leader for that team. So, I need to get out there and impress him.
Well, and go see Deb, get that hot tub, get that spa ordered today, and do it 3 decades of excellence with Home Innovation Spas, 20th and Highway 2 in Lincoln, off Industrial Road in Omaha, spasonline.com. Go see Deb, the spa lady. Deb, we'll talk next week. Thanks for making time today.
Oh, you bet. Thanks, Chris. Bye-bye.
Let's get you qualified. Memorial Day kickoff. Your chance to win a Weber gas grill, $100 gift certificate from Leon's Gourmet Grocers, and a $100 Campbell's Nursery gift card. Caller number 9, you will qualify. 402-466-3776, 1-800-825-5865. I'm going to go take calls. Bill, 30 seconds. Wrap it up. Bill, you're still muted.
All right. He gives me 30 seconds and tells me I'm muted. All right. So I didn't have a chance to talk about the renewal of the rivalry with Nebraska and Fordham. We didn't get a chance to talk about Salt Dogs baseball and Charlie Meyer bringing the team back and all of that. And we didn't get a chance to talk about why there are no longer Fairbury brand hot dogs at Memorial Stadium. I guess we'll have to do that tomorrow.